From the EBKV studios in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, you're listening to Brotherly Pod, the official podcast of BrotherlyPuck.com. Welcome, everybody, to BPW Radio. I'm your host, Dan the Flyer fan. We are here to talk the Flyers. Their win streak is over, but now it's a point streak. They are 9-0-1 in their last 10 games. They took the shootout loss to the Kings earlier in the week. We will talk about all that and more, but first, I do want to talk about my experience. Last night, I went to the Phantoms games for the first time this season. They took a 2-1 loss to the Hartford Wolfpack, which are the Rangers AHL team. I pretty much fully expected them to lose going in. Myers got called up in the morning. Carter Hart is up. Vorobiev is up. Phil Verone is up. And they announced the starters, or the scratches first, should I say. And the first three players they announced were Abe Kubel, Rubtsov, and David Kase. And it's, once they announced that those three were out and, knowing all the call-ups, I pretty much knew going in it was not going to be the best game. It was a very boring game for most of it. I however, did get to watch a Jori Lehtera goal live and in person. I was on the second deck, right above the opponent's net, and Lehtera scored right in front of my face. So that was some kind of cosmic justice right there, that I had to witness that in person right in front of my face. But overall, it was a fun experience. I did get to meet a couple fans last night. That's always fun, meeting people. Definitely going to try and get to more this season. I always forget how much fun those are, how much fun those games are until I actually get there. So hopefully get to a couple more before the season is over. I'll let everybody know beforehand. We can try and meet up, have some fun. But overall, the Flyers continue to play well on their own terms. They are 25-23-7. They played 55 games. They are still 6th in the Metro, but they are gaining ground fast. They are 13 points away from first place Islanders. They are 8 points away from third place in the Metro, and they are only 6 points away from the second wildcard spot, which is currently held by Pittsburgh. So they are gaining ground. It is no longer looking like an impossibility for them to come in and make the playoffs. Obviously the 9-0-1 streak is really helping, and they're going to need to continue to do something pretty much along those lines for most of the season, most of the rest of the season, if they want to continue to really make a push. As far as Carter Hart goes, he has still been the team's leader. Hart currently has played 17 games. He has a 2.45 GAA and a 926 save percentage. So all things considered, this kid is still playing out of his mind good. He has not registered a save percentage under 900 in his past 8 games, which I believe goes back to the middle of January. So, he has continued to step up. He has made 40 saves. He made 40 saves against Vancouver, and he made 40 saves against, I believe it was, let me see here, the Edmonton Oilers on February 2nd as well. So 2 of his last 3 games, he's made more than 40 saves. You would obviously like to see that go down a little bit. That's a heavy workload. They're obviously relying on him a whole lot in the back of the net. You would like to see those shots against definitely come down into the 30s. You don't want to see him facing this many shots so early on in his career, especially, with this playoff coming. You don't want him to be too exhausted. But overall, I think he's playing great. I think he should continue to play great as the season progresses. I think that the more stress that the Flyers are going to be under as, the games start to close out, the playoffs start to happen, they are 6 points out, the pressure is definitely going to start to build, not only for Carter Hart, but for the rest of the team. They're going to need to come through. They're going to need to start playing some really, really solid hockey. They can't come out and play 10, 15-minute games anymore. They're going to need to start playing full periods, full games of hockey in order to really try and solidify their playoff push that they are working very hard for. Carter Hart has not just been dominant on the ice, he is starting to make history. Carter Hart has tied Jocelyn Thibault for the longest win streak for a goaltender under 21 years of age with 8 straight wins. So it looks like tomorrow against the Penguins, he will start. So that'll be his chance to get 9 straight and hold the record for the youngest win streak by a goaltender. It also confirmed that Anthony Stolarz will start against the Wild, as the Flyers have another back-to-back this week. They actually have 2 back-to-backs this week. They play the Penguins Monday and the Wild on Tuesday. Then their next games would be a home-and-home with the Red Wings on Saturday and Sunday. So as far as this win streak goes, they definitely have the option, the opportunity, rather, to really push this streak forward. I think it's going to be an interesting game against the Penguins. It's certainly a big game in the standings, as the Penguins are the team currently clinging on to that second wildcard spot. So the Flyers definitely need to win that game. The Wild are pretty much in the same position. They're middle of the pack Western team, so the Flyers, again, it's not an impossible win. I think they could go out, if they play well against Pittsburgh, they should be able to ride that momentum Tuesday, hopefully keep it going against the Wild. The Red Wings are a very beatable team at this point, especially for the Flyers. They cannot fall into that trap game there on either night. So I think that's going to be good. They play the Lightning on Tuesday the 19th. So it is going to be a very busy week here for the Flyers. They've got 2 back-to-backs. I think overall I'm not overly concerned about this week. I think the Pittsburgh game should be interesting. I hope that they, can really keep the win streak going. The point streak going, rather. It's a point streak. It's not a win streak anymore. As far as other Flyers news goes, they did make a trade a couple days ago. They traded Christian Folin and Dale Weiss to the Montreal Canadiens in exchange for David Schlemko and Byron Fries, I believe is how you pronounce his last name. It was an interesting deal. Obviously, Weiss and Folin were 2 of Hextall's guys. Weiss was sent down to the Phantoms earlier this week. Christian Folin has served as the 7th defenseman this season. Weiss will return to the Canadiens. David Schlemko, a guy that essentially Schlemko and both Fries as well fit very similar roles to what Folin and Weiss did here, in the sense that they were 2 guys that the Canadiens really didn't have any plans for in the future. So essentially just a swapping of guys, new scenery. David Schlemko has 1 year left on his contract at $2.1 million, and Fries has, this is the end of his contract. He's on a $650,000 deal, so I would expect them to probably not re-sign him. They do have to deal with Schlemko's 2.1 for another season, but again, he will probably be an AHL guy, especially given all the bodies that are currently in the NHL and will be in the NHL, especially going to next season with guys like Moran healthy, and Myers will probably have a full training camp under his belt at that point. So I think it is probably just an AHL guy that they're going to have to bury his contract. I don't think they buy him out unless they have, some really big free agent plans in mind. But other than that, I think he's going to be an AHLer for the foreseeable future. And that trade led to other moves for the Flyers. They recalled both Phil Myers and Justin Bailey from the Phantoms. Corbin Knight did make it through waivers as well, so he is headed back to the Phantoms. What was originally thought a conditioning stint, he will probably stay down there now. Justin Bailey has played great since being acquired in a trade for Taylor Lear a couple weeks back. Phil Myers has been knocking on the NHL door for quite some time now. The past month or 2, he's played really, really well. So definitely going to be interesting to see what happens now. Obviously, the trade deadline is a couple weeks away, so it's no surprise that they're going to try out some of these kids now that have been kind of knocking on the door. It gives them a little more freedom going into the trade deadline if they really want to make some moves, if they really feel that they could part with a defenseman, one of their current members, for something, if they needed a return, if they needed it for a piece of a bigger trade. That could definitely be what they're planning on. Myers, I think, is going to be a very solid guy. I don't know where he's going to fit in the lineup at this point. I think it's going to be interesting, but he should definitely be able to come up, hopefully fit right in. He did struggle earlier in the year during the preseason. He did not seem to fit in compared to some of the rest of the guys, but he has been tearing up the AHL for the better part of 2 months now. So it definitely should be interesting to see what he can bring to the table. I think it's going to be a good chance for him. I think Justin Bailey will probably see, fourth line minutes. There's probably going to be some tinkering on the fourth line, especially as the season continues to go on towards the trade deadline and really towards the end. If they do make the playoffs, that is definitely going to be a spot that they're going to need to find their best hands and make that happen, because it has been a relatively weak point for a good portion of the season, and they have not had kind of the natural remedy thus far that they were hoping. Vorobiev has not played a huge role like they were expecting him to. And Verone, more often than not, is just kind of out there. Raffl is a good pair of hands, but for the time being, I don't think he's going to be any kind of consolation prize. I think you could possibly see him at the trade deadline, and we'll touch upon that a little later as we go on. That was a viewer question, but I think the trade deadline is going to tell a lot this year. I don't think it's going to be overly busy, but I do think we may see some veterans out to really make room for some of the kids. They still have Sam and Moran to come up and get some ice time. Hopefully they send him down for a conditioning stint sometime soon. I would have expected it to happen this week. It did not, so hopefully it'll happen in this upcoming week, because it is now the middle of February, so I would really hope that he does get his opportunity sooner rather than later, and he should be up hopefully for the playoff push come March. Let's get to the viewer questions this week. First up is Joe with Bailey and Myers on the way up. I feel like a trade is brewing. Raffl and others possibly on the way out. Do you see anything happening? We obviously have been talking about trades on the various shows for the past couple of weeks, and kind of discussed on an Angry and Negative this week. But, I think, especially with Justin Bailey being up, Vorobiev is already up, I do think maybe Raffl does kind of seem like the odd man out at this point. He's on a $2.3 million deal this year. He's an unrestricted free agent at the end of the season. I do like Raffl. I always kind of have liked Raffl. I think he is a very solid pair of hands to have around, but he's nothing that, he's not indisposable at this point. I think that he could definitely provide a solid bottom six presence to a team that needs somebody like him. I don't know what his return would be, or if it would be part of a bigger package. Again, I would fully expect Raffl to be one of the names that the Flyers would move at the trade deadline. I think Simmons' time is coming to a close as well. I think even though the Flyers are pushing for a playoff spot, Fletcher, from his comments, it does seem like his overall opinion on how to approach the trade deadline seems the same. I think moving Simmons is still the best option at this point. It's going to be hard. Obviously, it's not going to be fun, not going to be the best trade, but hopefully they can get some decent pieces back for Simmons. Again, I don't know what Raffl is really worth as a fourth liner, maybe a third liner at best. He's not going to produce a ton of offense, but overall, I think he could be a valuable asset for a team, maybe a mid-late round pick. It depends how desperate the team needs him. Nashville has been making some moves for some guys, some bottom six guys, and has been paying pretty heavily for some of them. So maybe there's a bit of market there for Raffl. Simmons, again, I think is as good as gone. I think those two are the most obvious choices at the trade deadline. I think the summer is going to really open things up as far as other moves go. I think on defense, Gudas may be an option to go. He's making 3.3 for one more season. Obviously his all-around flexibility has really kind of helped him become a player this season, and I think any team that is really watching him could use him again as a good, bottom four plug-in guy. Robert Haig could be another one. He's on a very, very manageable deal. He's only making $1.1 million this season and next as well. So, again, two guys that are on relatively cheap deals that the Flyers could stand to lose at this point. Again, with Myers up, Sanheim continues to take steps forward. You still got Sam Moran to address. Hopefully they get rid of McDonald, whether buy him out or trade this summer. They got a whole lot of things to figure out here, and I think that's we mentioned this on Angry and Negative as well. The only player they have on defense going into the 2021 season is Gostisbehere. Everybody else's deal is up before then, so they have a whole lot of ways to tinker and play with their defense before going into 2 seasons from now. So I think things are going to change. Again, I don't know how much of it is going to happen at the trade deadline itself. I think a lot of these bigger deals and bigger players if we're still talking moving somebody like Voracek or something crazy like that, I think, that would be a summer deal. There aren't many teams that can squeeze in an $8.2 million contract, at the trade deadline. So overall, I do expect Raffle to probably get moved. I expect Simmons to get moved. Maybe one of Haig or Gudis, depending on where the Flyers stand. Obviously, I think the next 2-3 weeks of games, whatever we are at, about 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 2 weeks. Monday would be the 11th, and that would be 2 weeks ahead of the 25th. So 2 weeks till the trade deadline. Obviously, if the Flyers do not keep this streak going, if they go hit a tailspin and lose quite a few of their next games, that may solidify their approach going into the trade deadline of getting rid of some players. If they keep going, if they keep winning, if they somehow find themselves in a playoff spot, I don't know what they're going to do. I think obviously the overall approach, how many players they sell, how many players they buy, is definitely going to depend on where they're at, how far out, or if they're in, or whatever their standings may be. They're only 6 points out of the second wildcard spot, like we talked about earlier, so anything is possible. A couple more wins, they could certainly be there. If they beat Pittsburgh tomorrow, it is going to be a very big win for them, and it could certainly help this team moving forward. But yes, I do think Raffle is expandable. I think there are plenty of call-ups right now. There are still plenty more players to be called up. I talked about this going in the very beginning with the Phantoms game last night, that Abe Kubel is hurt, and Rubtsov is hurt, and Kase is hurt, so there are certainly enough options there to fill Raffle's shoes. It's not like he brings anything that is overly necessary to the team. I think that he could be on the move. He could get a decent return. It's going to be hard to watch him go. He's been over here for quite a few seasons now, so overall, I think that the trade deadline is going to be pretty interesting this year, one way or the other. The next question is from Michael. I'd love to hear your analysis on the special teams over the past 10 games. Also, what long-term role does Vorobiev have going forward given the recent roster moves? I'll address Vorobiev first because, I like what I see out of him occasionally, but again, I think more often than not, he really has yet to do anything super astounding to me at the NHL level. He has played well in the AHL. He has played well under Scott Gordon, but it seems like every time he gets called up to the NHL, he just doesn't really seem to have it going for him. I think it could just be maybe he's young. It takes some time to really grow and develop at the NHL level. But overall, I talked about the conspiracy theory at the beginning of the season. I really do feel like Vorobiev in a way was set up earlier this year, especially in the preseason. He was playing predominantly top 6 minutes with guys like Giroux and Voracek and Van Riemsdyk, and then he goes to the regular season and he's on the fourth line with Laterra, and he looked really bad. Everybody goes, I gotta send him down. They sent him down. Obviously, under Hackstall, he didn't get much of a chance anyway, but it was one of those things that, I don't think he looked good. He took some time to kind of adjust back to the AHL. He started looking good, getting called up. He's been around, he's been around the net, around the play, but again, I haven't seen anything overly astounding out of him. Still not seeing a whole lot of ice time a night, seeing usually around 6 or 7 minutes, so I don't know what his value is going forward. I don't know what his long-term role is with the team. I think it's going to take a little more time to figure out where he kind of falls into play in terms of if he is going to be a legitimate player on the Flyers' fourth line. I think there's a lot of options for the Flyers coming up over the next couple of years in terms of who they have in that bottom six. So Vorobiev is really going to need to start putting up a fight sooner or later in order to make things happen. So I think that's going to be interesting. In terms of the special teams over the last 10 games, Scott Gordon has really done something to this team in terms of that. Their power play is 15 for 71 under him. It's at 21%, and their penalty kill is at 80%, which is far and above what Hackstall had him at earlier in the season. I think a lot of that just comes with the confidence that they were playing with. Overall, this team has taken leaps and bounds since Dave Hackstall was fired, mainly because a lot of the players are just kind of playing their game. They're not, being forced into certain roles that Dave Hackstall, put him in for a long time. So I think in that sense, the team is playing well. They keep getting better. I think if the team plays with confidence, they're going to go out there and play with confidence. Those power play numbers, again, I think there is work to do in terms of the lineups for both. I know a lot of people have not been very happy with their penalty kill lineups, so specifically, and Ivan Provorov's still on the power play. So, they have some tweaking to do, but again, with guys like Myers coming up that can really take over that power play role, and again, I think this should kind of figure itself out going into next year. I think once they have a new roster over the summer and at the trade deadline and over the summer, they can go into training camp next year with kind of a better idea of what they're looking at, especially with guys like Myers and maybe Justin Bailey and, whoever other young guys they have. If they get somebody at the trade deadline that could address a penalty kill or power play spot specifically, that would be great. But, overall, I think right now the numbers are just kind of reflecting on the team's overall play. And, they should be able to keep this going, hopefully, for the rest of the year. If they keep improving, it'll look a little better. I think, again, the roster is probably going to be a little different going into next season, so I'm not overly, I don't want to really hang on their numbers currently because it really is hard to tell given how bad they have been over this, a vast stretch of the season. So overall, I think that at the end of the day, I am happy with how Gordon has coached this team. I really do like Scott Gordon as a coach. We talked about the Sun Angry and Negative, so if you want those full rants, go listen to that show because I don't want to do it again. But overall, I think that it is a very interesting number that they keep improving on. I think as long as they can keep, I think the more they push for this season, more they push to the playoffs, they are definitely going to need those numbers to keep improving, especially the power play. I mean, they're pushing at 21%, which is fairly decent, but I think they can do a little better. The penalty kill's at 80%. It's pretty well numbered. I don't know what that ranks overall. I could pull it up here in a second, but overall, I think that the team really needs to just keep pushing. I think these special teams, obviously, they struggled both earlier in the year under Hackstall, and that was part of the reason why they were doing so bad, is their penalty kill was atrocious and their power play wasn't getting things done. So now that they are getting it done, hopefully they can keep the confidence rolling and just let this team keep playing their game. This next one is from another Michael. Simmons, they have to try and get something for him. I think it's time to move on. Possible team and package for him. If I had to guess, I've written multiple articles, on kind of predicting where he falls. The craziest trade scenario article this week, if you've not read that was a little fun one. And the very first article on Brotherly Puck that I put up was a top 5 landing spots for Wayne Simmons. At this point, I don't know. If I had to guess, it would probably be Winnipeg. I predicted in the craziest trade scenarios article that they could possibly trade him in a pick for Jacob Trouba, who, they're both on expiring deals, and that could be an interesting little swap there. Obviously, the Flyers would need to pay Jacob Trouba quite a bit, and that would, throw a monkey wrench into their current defense. But overall, I think that would be a very interesting one. I would expect a fairly hefty return for Simmons. I know there are a lot of people that are very down on his play, and as am I, his overall play, but I think that if he's going to continue to kind of be that leader off the ice, they should definitely get a return for him. I fully expect his name alone to draw at least a second-round pick, maybe more. I guess it depends on how bad the teams want him. Again, I think that Winnipeg would probably be a good place for him. Maybe Nashville. I don't know if Nashville is really in for it at this point. They have acquired a whole bunch of bottom 6 guys for relatively hefty price tags over the past week here that I didn't fully address on this show. There, it's all on Brotherly Puck Weekly if you want to go read that and all the full trades. But overall, I think that Simmons is probably going to draw a bigger, heftier return than most people think, so I'm not overly concerned about him. I do think he gets moved at the trade deadline, which is going to be hard as a fan to watch him go, but overall, I'm not overly concerned about where what he brings in return. And the last one is from Dario. Who do you see as the future of the penalty kill? Plenty of young skill guys. I always wonder who's going to be the next big PK guy like Coots is. That's an interesting one. I always kind of expected Nolan Patrick to kind of fall into a good penalty kill role, which overall he really hasn't been that effective. But again, I would like to see I don't know. Again, I think there are a lot of guys. Vorobiev is an option that I talked about a little earlier in terms of being somebody that they could count on in those special teams roles. I think they do have guys like possibly Albe Kubel, who does play on the special teams for the Phantoms. He could come in and make a splash. I think it's possible. Again, I think it really goes back to their lineups and how they change them over the summer. I don't know who makes the team next season. There's plenty of time to analyze that, as time goes on. But I think that overall, I don't know. I think you could potentially have somebody like Vorobiev, maybe an Albe Kubel. I don't know if there's anybody on the immediate horizon that I look at as going, he could be a good penalty kill guy. Personally, I think this is a situation that they should have addressed in the summer. I talked about this at length on previous shows about, I think Hextall should have gotten somebody like Ryan O'Reilly or Tyler Bozak or, somebody over the summer to come in and really help the penalty kill and be that, depth down the middle that they need to kind of give the team flexibility to make those kind of moves. But, they didn't, so they need to kind of address that. Again, it could be addressed in free agency as well or via trade with one of these guys that they're planning on packaging at the trade deadline or in the summer. So it could be an interesting one. Again, I don't know if there's anybody that strikes me as, kind of this penalty kill star that's already here, but who knows? I think in the future, as long as these young guys continue to develop, they could play a much bigger role for the team in the future. And that has been it for this episode of BPW Radio. I am a very sick Dan the Flyer fan, if you can't tell. My voice is a little messed up, but hopefully that'll be cleared up. It's going to be a much easier week of podcasting for myself. No Brotherly Pod lined up this week. No OMB podcast either. The Angry Negative Show will return on Wednesday. Jim and I will be back to discuss, hopefully, the Flyers' continued point streak. Over the next two games. They play Pittsburgh tomorrow and Minnesota on Tuesday. So hopefully the Flyers can keep those games. Hopefully they inch ever closer to a playoff spot. You can check out the new Brotherly Puck Weekly. Issue number 9 is up right now. If you have not checked that out yet, you can check out this past week's articles, the top 5 crazy trade scenarios that could actually happen. It seems to be a fan favorite article there. So if you have not read that out, if you have not checked that out yet, please go do. There's a piece, The Evolution of Scott Lawton, is also up to check out on brotherlypuck.com. I have been your host, Dan the Flyer Fan. You can find me on Twitter at Dan the Flyer Fan. You can find the site at Brotherly Puck. You can find this show and all the other shows at Brotherly_pod. If you want to count down Carter Hart's win streak with me, you can do that at Hart Countdown. He has 681 wins, and he passes Martin Brodeur for first place in NHL history. So it's coming. It's coming quick. It's going to be a short 8.5 years until he passes. So when that happens, you can count down there. I am Dan the Flyer Fan. This has been BPW Radio. I will be back with you on Wednesday. As for now, everybody else, see you later. Goodbye. See you on Wednesday.